most of the things that the governor presented in January are still items and topics on discussion. I thought it interesting. I was trying to find some additional information out over the last several days to give your board today, and buried within the Office of the Governor's budget, down about 3 or 4 different other press releases down there, there was a little fact sheet where it said the governor announces an executive order expecting to save California an additional $100 million. So it's not something that was highlighted by any of our partners. We haven't seen any chatter, as we call it, coming up, so forth. But this was signed on the 19th of February, in addition to the package of bills that he signed that came from the Assembly. And in there it talks about a hiring freeze. It talks about reducing and canceling contracts or encumbrances, and also puts some restraints on travel. Our office will be meeting with the county department heads next Wednesday, as is our normal schedule, and we'll be talking about many of those issues. And I expect that we'll be coming back to you with some further clarification and directives that we anticipate taking to save money in the current year's budget. But the work of the legislature only focused in on this year. I think many of us were hoping they'd take some more long-term solutions. That did not happen in the legislature, and in fact, I think it's evidenced by the fact that the LAO, or the Legislative Analyst's Office, is recommending a series of further cuts over and above what the governor had originally proposed to bring the House in order. The long and the short of that, some of the answers we were hoping for to give us a clue of what's going to happen before the May revise did not materialize over the last 45 days or so. So we're going to be going forth with a number of assumptions here in the budget process that are strictly that, assumptions based on what's going to happen with the declining revenues coming into the state, and what the governor's May revise will look like. So those are kind of just a context frame some of our discussions. So I will turn some time over now for the overview of the workshop to our Assistant Chief Executive Officer, Allison.
Good afternoon. So just a quick overview. You have the agenda, both the posted agenda and then one with hopeful timeframes in it at the front of your packet here. We're going to focus first on this fiscal year, and that's doing the second quarter mid-year fiscal report. And Jennifer, our Deputy CEO in charge of the budget, will be providing that. And then looking at appropriations and expenditures, and then looking at revenues, our auditor, Meredith Ford, will be doing that. And then looking at more specifics on the state fiscal emergency, again, for this fiscal year. The one change in the agenda we are going to do is move where you see below in the 2008-9 budget, just so it flows better and we don't have to stop in the middle of the PowerPoint, the state and federal budgets impacts for 2008-9 and the revenue forecasting. That will go right after the presentations on the second quarter report and the current fiscal year state actions, because we're just going to put those all together. And then we'll talk through the PowerPoint about budget process, our existing budget commitments, and how this all fits together with budget development. The final component of this whole thing is board budget priorities, and that's a discussion that obviously needs to involve the board and kind of looking at where we are in the budget development process and giving your thoughts on that. And then the conclusion in terms of next steps and final comments. So that's the agenda. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Okay. If not, then we'll proceed with Jennifer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chair. I'm here today to give you basically a brief overview and a summary of our second quarter mid-year budget for 2007-08. I've provided in your packets today your worksheet that kind of gives you the numbers of all of the departments with a summary recap and the mid-year budget update report. I'm not going to read every single thing that's in the summary. I'm just going to hit the key highlights, and I will ask questions and answer questions. If the board has any questions on any of the things that I'm reporting today. The second quarter budget projections were based on the estimates of projections through 2007-08. These estimates, however, need to be noted as possibly changing dramatically by third quarter based on the governor's January proposed mid-year reductions, possibly impacting the various departments even greater as we near the May revise. The second quarter preliminary projections indicate a change in the total net county cost for 2007-08 and to be under, including contingency funds, of $813,681. However, if you take into consideration that the contingency fund was funded by a $500,000 reduction in repayment for the teeter plan for this fiscal year, our budget projection would be under $313,681 if we paid this back. The key highlights for this budget are an increase in projected revenue for this fiscal year, higher revenues projected than budgeted, mostly in the current and prior secured property taxes, sales tax VLF in lieu, and mental health A87 payment. Timber harvest funds will not be realized this year as we are projecting, and we have downturns in sales tax and TOT and other revenues. The overall increase in revenue that we are projecting for 2007-08 is $1,070,384. This, however, is offset with the various departmental impacts that have come in for their projections for mid-year. The key departments that are projecting are the sheriff's budget with a projected impact to be coming in slightly or over budget in both the combined jail and sheriff's budgets by $648,275. Analysis by the CEO's office, however, shows that the net estimated salary projection for both budgets combined for this year is going to be under budget by $93,000. The primary difference is the CEO projection to the sheriff projection in anticipated fully funding positions that are vacant and overtime. The primary reason for both of these budgets to be projected as over, according to the sheriff, is mostly due to overtime. And in the sheriff's budget, right now, as is, overtime is at 83% of budget. In the jail budget, the 1000 series is projected to be coming in at net county cost. However, historically, with vacancies and turnover factors in the jail, the salaries usually present themselves at the end of the fiscal year for the jail to have some savings, which are offset to the sheriff's budget. This year, however, there is extra help that has gone over in the jail budget by $70,000 for this line item. The CEO is projecting this budget to be under in the 1000 series by approximately $467,000 if overtime remains the same. The net result, basically, for the sheriff's jail and sheriff's budget is that if overtime remains the same as it is right now, the CEO is still projecting that both the sheriff and the jail's budget will be on target or slightly under. If, however, the overtime still runs over in the overtime line item and there's projected increases in the overtime as they are right now, you will see basically a bleeding in both of these budgets, and we will have a budget issue between these two budgets. The jail bookings are up in the